Welcome, everybody. New live class. I'm excited. Converting the advantage. We're going through more examples today. I have 5 more games for you guys. This is going to be good. So, first question for everybody. I haven't done this question in a couple live streams. Where is everyone watching from today? Put your answers in the chat. So like usual, we're going to make this a very interactive live stream. It's going to be walking through games. I want a lot of feedback from you guys. I'm going to ask you questions. What would you play here? What would your plan be to win in this type of position? This is going to be an interactive class. All right, we have Dennis here, Rochester, Minnesota. Hey, Zelda, welcome. If you don't want to say where you're from, just put something else in the chat so that I know who's here. Maybe put your favorite food if you don't want to say where you're from. Okay, Dennis, Zelda. And at the end, Zelda's saying ramen, nice. Zelda, do you like restaurants that serve fancy ramen, or do you prefer to make it at home, or both? Mackenzie's here, Lewiston. Welcome. Both mostly, nice. So we're going to do a review of 5 games today. There's going to be a Q&A at the end. And then a bit of a last minute surprise decision. We're going to give away 2 free courses today. So throughout today's live stream, there's going to be a couple giveaways, and there's going to be questions, and whoever gets the answer the closest wins the course. There's no Zoom link. You're at the right place, watching on YouTube Live. Nobody's on Zoom today. All right, we'll let a few more people come on in. If you're just getting here, let us know where you're watching from or your favorite food. Kansas City or St. Louis for good ramen. I don't know if there's a great place near me, but I'm not a huge ramen eater, so it's hard to know. Dennis might know. Dennis and I live in the same city. Dennis, none of your games are being reviewed today, though. All right, next question for you guys. Yeah, ramen restaurants. So this interactive class is going to be reviewing 5 examples on how to convert the advantage. These examples are going to be put into the current Art of Conversion course. So I'm going to add these 5 examples with PGNs, with takeaway summaries, and with quiz questions all into the course. But I wanted to ask you guys, who has the Art of Conversion course already? Let me know in the chat if anyone has it, or if you don't have it, that's fine too. You can put that in the chat. Mojo Working has the course already. Awesome. And that course is going to be at the $14 price through the end of tomorrow. So starting on Monday, that price will go up to $29. And it's included with lifetime access. Mackenzie does not. Dennis, I know you have lifetime access, Dennis, so you should have it. Okay, let's jump into the first game. Here we go. So these games are coming from the Chicago Open back in 2024, so May of last year. And the nice thing about the Chicago Open for finding converting the advantage games is my rating was 2,200 at the time, a little over 2,200. Almost all of my opponents were in the 2000s or the 2100s. And a lot of times when I play in Chicago, I'll lose a game or two. I'll draw a game or two and then maybe win like 4 games. That tends to be my record. And then usually I go down a little bit on rating. So really it's a good way for me to test, can I get advantages against experts and can I convert those advantages into wins? So this is game number 1. And I'm playing the black pieces. We're going to jump ahead in this one. So some of the games will go through the opening. But for this one, we're going to jump ahead to move number 42. And we'll get to the conversion position right here. Okay. So the game had been roughly equal pretty much the whole way. And at this point, my opponent plays, I play rook d8, and my opponent plays knight to e5. And this is a huge blunder. So now the game went from equal to winning for black. So this is the first question for you guys. Put your answers in the chat. This is a critical moment. Can you guess the best move for black? What's the best move in this position? There are 2 correct answers. So you have the advantage now. Material's equal. And you need to figure out how to convert this. Zelda says, I don't have the course either. This is something where when I was going through my own takeaways from over the board classical games, I realized that one of the things that I need to work on was converting advantages. I worked with a grandmaster coach just for a couple of lessons. He went through a bunch of my games and he said, that's the number one thing. He said, you're having trouble taking an position with an advantage and turning it into a win. A lot of times I was going into drawn positions. Like I would simplify too quickly. The opponent would hold the draw. Okay, Philip, welcome. Bishop takes knight, Philip is saying, followed by pushing the pass pawn. Bishop takes knight, followed by pushing the pass pawn. I don't see any other guesses yet, and that is correct, Philip. So bishop takes e5. The other correct move is pawn to d2. Yep, Mackenzie's saying bishop takes e5 followed by, not sure about d2 or rook to c2. So bishop takes e5 is good, but the other good move here is d2. So d2 is what I played in the game. Bishop takes e5, also correct. And the idea with bishop takes e5 is it's a more forcing version of d2. You take the knight while it's sitting there, white takes back, and then you play d2 immediately. So I played d2 first. And the small difference here is it allows white, and maybe it's not small, but it allows white to play knight takes g6 as the strongest response. So it's a little bit cleaner had I just taken that knight first. But the idea with this move is, with d2, you want to paralyze the opponent's pieces. You want to get them in a stuck position where all they can do is sit back and defend. This is one of the best techniques to building an advantage and converting it. Get your opponent's pieces playing passive and just stuck having a defensive role. So after d2, my opponent plays rook to b2. Now, the answer here is going to be pretty easy, but put your answer in the chat. What is the best move for black? There's actually only one winning move. So the winning move is a minus 4.6 eval. The next best move is equal. So put your answers in the chat. What is the best move for black? Zelda is saying rook to c1. Clifton's saying rook to c1. Dennis is saying rook to c1. Zelda's saying wait. Philip says take the knight. Zelda says actually yes. I'm assuming rook c1 still, Zelda. What does white play after rook to c1? Mackenzie says rook c1 was the first thought, but I think that's a blunder, right? I thought the answer would be easy, but now I realize that it's kind of a trick question. So you see rook to b2 with the question mark next to it. You see that that's a mistake. And I think the first thought is, oh, that rook just left the first rank. That's why it's a mistake. Let's put our rook down on c1. But actually, rook to c1 allows white to win that pawn. So white couldn't capture with the other rook because of rook takes d1. There's only one move for white that saves the draw here, but it's this. Rook d takes d2. That's a draw. So the reason this is a mistake is white needed to play a move like knight takes g6 or knight back to f3. White needed to avoid this trade bishop for knight. That's why rook to b2 is a mistake. So the correct answer is bishop takes e5. And it's okay getting the answer wrong. This was not an easy position. There's a lot of tactics. Bishop takes e5. F takes e5. Here's another chance for you guys. Best move for black. Only one winning move again. Let's see what you guys think. If you said rook c1 on the last move, this is a chance to redeem yourselves. One winning move for black here. What do we think? Zelda's saying rook d to d3. Philip says rook to c3. Okay, yeah, if you have rook to d3 as your move, put which rook? Is it rook c to d3 or rook d to d3? Okay, Philip is saying move the c rook. Zelda's saying move the d rook. Dennis says the c rook. So the main thing here is we want to keep this pawn defended. Mackenzie says c rook. So the answer is rook c to d3. So look what we're doing here. We have both of our rooks guarding this pawn. White has both rooks attacking the pawn. That means this pawn is a permanent fixture here. It's not going to ever be captured as long as we don't want it to be. White capturing the pawn is going to lose his rook. The king on e4 is boxed out by this rook, right? This king cannot come back to go get the pawn. It's boxed out by the rook. So that's a key in this position. I knew in the game by taking on e5, pawn takes back, I could get this position where white can never capture this pawn. And now the nice thing about that is white's pieces are stuck, right? White's rook here is tied down to the defense of this pawn. Otherwise, I could take it. This rook can never move because I'll promote. So both of these rooks are stuck, and this king can't get back to the d pawn. That gives me all the flexibility. I could use this other rook to harass the king. I could bring my king up. I could push this pawn. There's a lot of flexibility here for black. White is stuck playing passive. So that's why this eval here is already a -5, because this is going to be a win by force. Yeah, Philip's right. So that's the other thing that we're going to talk about. This king is also in a bit of a mating net. The threat here is rook d to d4, checkmate. And one of my takeaways, in addition to converting advantages more smoothly, was playing out endgames that were equal. So this was an endgame that was equal, and I was really pushing for a win. And I have an endgame course that's actually already out, but I haven't promoted it yet. In the endgame course, I go through a bunch of examples on how you need to play actively in the endgame. Encourage your opponent to make mistakes by giving them tough questions, right? Look for all these different resources in the endgame, even when it's equal. See if you can create winning chances. So right now, we have a chance at a checkmate too. Okay, so white plays king to f4. I play rook 8 to d4 check. One of the best ways to checkmate a king in the middle of the board is to bring them towards your pawns, because the pawns help out. So white plays king to g5. I play king to g7. And the idea here is pretty sneaky. It's rook f3, followed by rook to f5 checkmate. White's about to get checkmated in 2 moves, and the king is stuck on g5, and the rooks are stuck on d1 and b2. How does white get out of this? So my opponent plays pawn to g4, and it's saying blunder, but all moves are losing. This one just loses a little bit faster. I play rook to e4 now. So instead of going for this idea, g4 blocks it. So I'm playing rook to e4. And now the idea is I'm going to take this pawn, and after the king moves to f4, I'm going to put my other rook on d6. So my rooks will be on these two squares. The white king will be here. And then the checkmate threat is pawn to g5 mate. So there's some crazy threats here, and white doesn't have time to get out of this if I get the move order correctly. So here, white captures the pawn. So that was kind of the thing I had to calculate. If I move rook to e4 going for the checkmate, am I okay with white taking the pawn? And the tactics still work. So rook takes d2. I take this pawn with check. King f4. Now note, if king h4, there's still a mate. I can play pawn g5 check. The king moves here, and rook h3 is mate. So there's mating nets all over the board. Because that king has already walked close to our pawns, the king is in a lot of trouble. Okay, so king f4 played. And now I play this calm-looking move, rook d to e3. Boxing that king in again completely. The rooks defend each other. And pawn to g5 is mate. Zelda's saying this is brilliant. Yeah, this was a super fun endgame to play, Zelda. So now pawn to g5 is mate. And my opponent John plays pawn to h4. Logical, right? Blocking the g push. And now I play rook 5 to e4 check. Let's bring that king closer one more time. King to g5. Now again, the king is trapped. And I play rook to g3. And it's a mate in one no matter what. White resigned. Okay, so what were the key takeaways from this game? When you get a winning advantage, look for one single powerful threat that can completely restrict your opponent. So in this game, it was the pawn on d2. The pawn on d2, the threat of promoting to a queen with pawn to d1 was too strong. White was just stuck defending that pawn this whole endgame. And then the other takeaway is, first you want to paralyze your opponent's pieces, right? We made those rooks stuck. And then look to deliver the knockout blow. So trap their pieces and then look for another way to get the win. All right, that was game number 1. We will do a Q&A at the end if you have additional questions. But we're going to jump right into game number 2. This one, I have the white pieces against Jonathan. And we're going to start at move number 8. So we get this wild position. Now the eval here is 2.2. So if you look at a Stockfish eval, anything over +2, that's kind of the threshold where if you're over +2, usually that position is a win with best play. Now, human against human, +2 sometimes is not very easy to win. Humans make a lot of mistakes back and forth. But +2 is kind of that threshold, especially for a master playing over the board classical. Like, you can kind of feel above +2, like, okay, I should win this game. That's how I felt in this position. The position is dead equal in terms of material. Nothing has been captured on the board yet. 8 moves in, but this is a win. Now, I botched this conversion because of one major psychological problem: impatience. I felt that I needed to rush this position and really just blow my opponent off the board. I knew I was winning. I knew it should be a win. I got antsy and I thought, well, how can I make this a win as quickly as possible? The move I played was pawn to g4. And as we're going to see, this move was not good. So the question for you guys is, what's the best move for white? What do we want to play here? Keep in mind, I was impatient. So you want to find a move that is not impatient. It makes it easier to convert this win. Ninad, welcome to the chat. Knight to d2. Philip is saying pawn to b3. Zelda is saying knight to d2. Also developing the knight. Protects from the discovered check. The b pawn pushes. This is good. Knight b to d2 is the best move. Yeah, g4 creates a hole, and it's also going to sort of trap the queen, which was an interesting idea that it wasn't really even on my radar. So knight d2, let's just look at this quickly. If black plays pawn to h6, we can now play bishop to f6, hitting the rook. And after takes, rook h7, queen f4. Really what we've done here is we've just ruined black's castling. So black isn't going to castle queenside most likely, and now there's no kingside castling. And we still have a lot of pieces on the board. So this is still like a plus 2.2 position. But getting that black king to not be able to castle kingside is a nice way to push for converting the win. Okay, so let's see what happens after g4. h6 played by my opponent, and I think this is the move that really surprised me. I don't remember if I even looked at h6, but when my opponent played h6, I thought, okay, this is getting a little bit uncomfortable for the queen. And if I go bishop to f6 here, knight takes, queen takes, rook h7, it's a similar position to what we just looked at, but this g pawn up on g4 is completely unnecessary. It makes my king weaker, and it just gives black a little bit more counterplay in the position. So for example, b3 is threatened here. If I play knight d2 like we wanted in the other line, now black gets bishop to g7. So this was really a wasted move that's giving black some quick counterplay to fight back. Okay, so g4, h6. I played bishop to e3, bishop e7. My queen had to move, attacked by the bishop. Knight f6. Now, next question for the chat. Doesn't black have g5 after bishop f6? Queen takes h5 can be played. So that's a really good question, because it looks like at first glance it's deflecting the queen and then the bishop can get captured. So in the game, bishop e3, bishop e7, queen h3, knight f6. There's one move for white that holds a big advantage. The next best move is just a slight advantage. That's okay, Zelda. So put your answers in the chat. What is the best move for white here? How do we keep this advantage in the plus 1.5 range? This is a nice move. It's a tactical shot. Philip says 6. We're going to need more than that, Philip. Bishop takes h6. Okay. g5 is also being suggested. g5 utilizes this pin down the h file. This move is a little bit harder to see. I did find it in the game, unlike that g4 move. Zelda still likes knight b to d2, because now the e pawn is loose. Knight b to d2, according to the engine, that's the third best move. Bishop takes h6 and g5 aren't in the top 3. So this is like a 0.2 advantage for white, 0.2. We have something around 1.5. No one has said the answer yet. You can put in another guess if you already guessed once. What's the best move for white? Think tactics. Okay, Philip is saying e6. I think you mean d6, and d6 is the correct move. Pawn to d6. Stuart's saying knight to g5. Yeah, you guys want to use this h-pawn pin. So I'll have the PGN posted into the course later if you want to explore this more. But pawn to d6. This consolidates the center, right? We had this tension between the two pawns. Bishop takes d6 runs into a fork. So I'm able to use that threat of the fork to really try to paralyze the black pieces. Okay, so my opponent plays pawn to b3 check. Discovered check. I block with the knight. Bishop to f8. c3. So I'm okay with pawn takes a2. I also had to calculate, is queen takes a2 okay? Because after rook takes b takes, black almost queens, but knight to b3 will save it. And you can always tuck that knight back on a1. Pawn to c3 played. B takes a2. Little annoying because that pawn is just sitting there holding my rook down for now. But the black queen does have to babysit it. Pawn to g5. So now I utilize this pin on the h-file. Knight to h5. And here, question for the chat. Put your answers in there. What is the best move for white? There's a few good moves. And the move I played actually gave black the slight advantage. I botched the advantage in this position. And again, I was impatient. So that was the theme for this game. I felt like I have to win quick, win quick. I knew black was in trouble. I felt with the king in the center and all these pieces on the board, I should be checkmating black or something pretty quickly, or converting to some quick material. But here you need to have a little bit of patience. What's the best move for white? I think you guys will find it too. Knight h5 just played. Actually, I'll tell you my move while you're thinking. I played bishop to c4. And my idea was I wanted to just get all the pieces out quickly and try to attack black. And I was even thinking I'm okay sacrificing the d pawn if it opens up the d line. Now, if I'm able to castle, put a rook on d1, maybe I can get a quick attack. Make that bishop move back again. But there's one move here that keeps the advantage around 1.3. So it's still pretty close to that winning territory. It's definitely a clear advantage for white. Okay, Zelda is saying e5. Stuart and Dennis are saying knight to c4. Those are the top two moves. So knight c4 is the second best move. It's a 1.1 advantage. Hits the queen, guards d6. e5 is the top move. Nice job, Zelda. This is a 1.3 or 1.4 advantage. So look what we're doing here. We're paralyzing the black pieces. This bishop now cannot take the pawn. This bishop is permanently stuck from going to d7, so it's going to have to go this way. The knight can get out, but the point is we're really trying to cramp black's position here. We're trying to make it difficult for them to get the pieces untangled. So let's look at one sample line. If bishop to a6, we can go queen to g4. Takes, takes, knight c6, queen c4. We're holding all the center pawns. This is defended, and now we're ready to scoop up the pawn on a2. So we back to equal material. This pawn's also weak, and you can just tell with this extra space that we have, we are in the driver's seat. This is still around that 1.5 pawn advantage, surprisingly, so it's not winning yet, but it's very close to winning. We don't have to rush this position. All right, so let's see how I messed it up. Bishop to c4, blunder, and my opponent plays bishop takes d6. I go on to lose this game. So I think this was a psychological problem too. Because I knew I was winning and things weren't going according to plan, I could just feel that advantage slipping away, slipping away. I think the psychology of that really threw me off, and I couldn't adjust to, okay, I'm trying to find the win, to, hey, this is a brand new position. You're not winning anymore, Matt. You don't even have an advantage. You need to just recalculate this. I go on to lose this game. And actually, my opponent did offer a draw at one point. So we're not going to go through the whole game here. The PGN will be in the course. But this was a bad botched game by me. All right, let's go to game number 3. Miles. And I think after this game, we're going to do the first giveaway. So be ready, guys. All right, let me find it. Miles, where are you? Here we go. Okay, so in this game, this was interesting. My opponent, I asked him after, I said, what was this setup that you did? because it seemed like maybe he plays the same setup every game. And he said he's a Queen's Indian defense player, and he sort of does the Queen's Indian defense from the white side. I'll just go through it quickly. I tried the modern defense, and he did this setup, and he was blitzing out his moves. So I could tell that he does this setup all the time, right? He got exactly what he wanted. But my goal here was to take this really solid position that white had, and he's an expert, and I'm a master, so I really wanted to push for the win still against this solid setup. So I was thinking, how can I make this as messy as possible? First thing I did was I took this pawn, creating an imbalance. Now I have a D pawn, and he has a C pawn, right? I have no C pawn. So no matter what move white plays here, no matter how he recaptures, there's at least this imbalance with the pawns. Also, no pawns are locked up yet, so I thought that could give me some better winning chances. I'm trying to avoid a draw is the idea. E takes D4, D5. So what I liked about this position is I'm already trying to fix a weakness here on D4. Right? Long term, I'm hoping that that either becomes an isolated pawn, say that C pawn leaves the board, or it trades for the D pawn, or maybe it pushes past and then the D pawn becomes a backward pawn. But my goal here is make that the weakest pawn on the board. I'm going to use that to try to play for the win. Knight D2, develop, develop, D takes C, B takes C. So now we get a hanging pawn position. Knight H5. So notice how I'm trying to apply pressure to the center directly. Knight F4. Trying to pose problems. And this is now a half a pawn advantage for black. So by kind of applying this pressure, move after move, my opponent's making small inaccuracies. Rook E1, trade. So now I have the bishop pair. Maybe I can use that to help with the advantage. None of the pawns are locked up. Bishops have a lot of scope in this position. E6, I'm trying to prevent D5, also keeping this pawn safer. Rook D1, Queen F6, ready to bring this other rook in. Rook C2, Queen F5, D5, E takes D, C takes D. So this is a blunder. We're playing black. The game has been complicated, right? There's a lot of tension in the middle in terms of pieces attacking the pawns, pieces defending the pawns. White just blunders here. C takes D5. The eval is -2. So we're right at that threshold of, could this position be winning with best play? Find the best move for black. What's the best move here? And then we're going to ask on the next move too. Yeah, Spider is saying, what a crazy looking position. I agree. This is like one of those positions in Blitz where if you look at the chart after, it's going to go like this, because both sides are going to just be blundering back and forth. Okay, Zelda's saying knight to D4. Stuart's saying rook F to E8. Dennis says the queen has a job. Zelda, I'm not sure if you meant knight to D4 or knight to E5, but knight to E5 is a key idea in this position. Rook F to E8 is the correct answer. You get a free developing move, you hit the queen, and like Dennis said, the queen has a job defending the rook. Now my opponent plays queen to D2. And now find the best move. This one's more important than the last one. The best move here is a -2.6, whereas the next best move is a 1.5. So we're talking eval numbers, and I know humans don't necessarily think in terms of numbers like this, but finding these moves are critical because you want to push for that win when you have it, right? When it's a critical moment, you need to find these best moves. Okay, bishop to H6. Trying to hit the queen, which guards the rook. That's an interesting idea. It's not showing as a top 3 move. Oh, I see why. Bishop H6, queen takes H6, queen takes C2, queen G7's a mate with the bishop defending it. That's pretty crazy. Dennis says bishop h6, no but mate. Okay, so what's the best move here? Zelda, I think you were on the right track on the last move that you suggested. There's a tactic here. Create 2 threats at the same time. 2 double attacks at the same time. So when you have these advantages, what I like to do when I'm not impatient like in the last game, I like to slowly build, restrict the opponent, play for the initiative, create threats, make them defend. While I'm building, every single move I'm scanning. What are the ideas to convert this into an easier win? And oftentimes it's a tactic. This is a position now where we can take this advantage that we have and convert it using tactics. Okay, I see a couple correct answers now. Spider and Mackenzie are both saying knight to e5. That's correct. Rook takes c2 is threatened, and also knight takes f3 with a check. And that's key. Because white plays rook takes c8 here, and we don't have to take this back right away. We first take with check, g takes back, now rook takes c8. So we're still equal material, but look what we just did. We exposed the white king with 4 pieces on the board each, including a queen. So there's major pieces on the board, queens and rooks. With the white king exposed, their pawn structure is damaged. Look at all these pawn islands, right? There's 4 pawn islands for white. We just have 2 with the exposed king. So now we're in winning territory according to the engine. Bishop takes, queen d4 check, king moves back. My opponent would like the queen trade. They know that if I take, well, that would also undouble the pawns, which is huge. But if the queens come off the board, the king safety doesn't matter anymore. So I see queen e4, and I want to keep queens on. I move queen back. Queen d3, queen d6. So my goal here, just like we've looked at in other examples, I want to tie white down to the defense of this d-pawn. If I can tie white down to the defense of the d-pawn, then I can look for other threats. So notice how maybe my queen takes a3. Or maybe I can get something going on the king side at the same time. But the plan is, number 1, let's tie white down. King g2. Now, I think Miles did a good job here. What he was trying to do this whole endgame is he's trying to tempt me to allow him to push the d-pawn. You'll see this multiple moves from Miles. He tries to set these little traps. He wants me to take a3 so that he can play d6, d7, and create counterplay. I play rook to d8 first. Notice how this pawn is triple attacked, but I don't necessarily need to take it right away. There is no way for white to defend that pawn a third time. The knight on b3 is very clumsy here. It can't get to a good square to defend this pawn. It'll take like 4 moves. Queen e3. Queen f6. So again, I think Miles wants me to take this because then I'm walking into a pin. Maybe he can get a little bit of counterplay. So instead I play queen f6. What I'm doing is I'm scanning around for tactics. I know this pawn's not going to push to d6. If it pushes, I have a simpler rook takes d6. And if white can't push that pawn for counterplay, where's the counterplay coming from? And another thing you can do in these positions, if you calculate that your opponent doesn't have a great way to make counterplay, sometimes they make their own weaknesses, right? People don't like being under pressure, feeling uncomfortable, and just sitting back doing nothing. This is a position where Miles needs to sit back and do nothing. He needs to just make waiting moves, like rook to d3, rook to d2, rook to d4. He needs to sit back and wait. That's hard to do. So here he plays pawn to h4. This is an inaccuracy. The eval now jumps to a minus 3.5. Okay, so we are winning. The question is, do I want to take this pawn and allow d6? So he's setting another one of his traps, and I calculated that this will be good for us still. taking the pawn on h4 exposes the white king even more. So I take d6. Now here's the question for you guys. Find the best move for black. There's multiple winning moves, but one is clearly the strongest. And again, we're using tactics to convert this. So we went from sort of a long-term looking advantage, and then just after 3 or 4 moves of that, now we have a tactic. Dennis is saying queen to g3 check. Not afraid of king takes g3, Dennis. Okay, he said g4 now. Queen to g4 check. Any other guesses? And remember, as soon as this game is done, we're doing the first giveaway. Queen to g4 check, says Jackie. So what's happening here is this bishop is pinning the f-pawn since the d-pawn moved. Yep, Stuart's saying queen g4 check. That's correct. So we have queen g4 check. King f1. Now, there's a lot of winning moves here. I didn't play the quickest winning move. Queen h3 check is a -5. I played bishop a6, which is a -4. It forces king e1, or white has to offer up material. Now I play queen to d7, and I have a nice threat here. Rook to e8. And I kind of calculated this out. Queen e7 is the move that white wanted to play. He still plays it, but I had rook e8. And white resigned here. The best move would have been rook to d4, according to the computer. And the game goes on a little bit. But this is still completely winning for black. It's a -4. Queen c6 is the top move. And the game will go on a little bit, but it's still a win. And we have this past h-pawn long term. Okay, but queen e7, rook e8. So the result of all that simplification is this clean pin to convert the game. So it ended up being tactics in the end to get the conversion. And I would say one of the takeaways here is if you don't have anything immediate, but your opponent is tied down, you don't feel they have any great counterplay, keep looking for ways to pose problems to your opponent. And then sometimes they will just hand you a new weakness to work with. So I was fortunate enough that my opponent played h4, allowing my queen to jump in and start the attack. Sometimes you just have to play slowly. And yeah, Dennis is saying probing. And then the black king was nice and safe the whole time. That's correct, Spider. There's multiple ways to convert an advantage. This one was having patience, building, probing, just waiting, but look for those tactics every single move. Then as soon as you have the chance, then you pounce. All right, so now we are going to do the first giveaway. All right, so I don't have a way to contact you guys on YouTube. So unless I know your Discord name, you might have to put your Discord username in the chat. And let me paste the Discord link. If you're not in the Discord server already, there's a link and you can join. If you're already in there, you don't have to click the link. So here's the first question. My favorite hobby outside of chess is pickleball right now. And I wanted to have a numeric answer for a question so that we could say who's the closest. I asked ChatGPT, if you take my pickleball rating and convert it to USCF, what is the rating equivalent? So what I want you guys to do is put your estimated USCF rating in the chat. What do you think my pickleball rating would be if it were a USCF rating? And whoever gets the closest gets to pick one course for free. Unless you're a lifetime access member, then you win a $25 Amazon gift card. So you either get a free course if you're not lifetime access, or if you're lifetime access, a $25 gift card. And it's whoever's closest. Okay, $13.50, $18.50. Okay, Dennis, you have to pick one number. Okay, Mackenzie will lock you in with $16.50. Kevin's saying 1143. Semicolon is saying 1500. Zelda 1750. Dennis 1550. It should be like Price is Right. I was going to do just closest though. Not closest without going over. $1. Anyone? $1. Rating of 1. No, just kidding. It's closest. Has to be closest. Okay, Jackie 1474. Stuart 1820. The closest is actually really close. Only 25 points away. Goes to Zelda with the 1750 guess. So according to, this was just, I tossed it into ChatGPT. According to ChatGPT, 1725 was the correct answer. So Zelda was the closest. Zelda, do you know already which course you want, or do you want to think about it? And I already know your Discord name, Zelda, so you don't have to put it in. And I'll get the next game queued up. Spider says, wow, you're pretty good at pickleball. So Dennis knows this, Spider, but I've been completely addicted to pickleball. I've played for 2 years now, and for most of that time, I was probably playing like 4 or 5 days a week. Just completely love it. Okay, Zelda with the endgame course. Nice, Zelda. And that one hasn't even been announced yet. Yeah, I'm making a note right now, and I'll get that added once this class is done. Oh yeah, Zelda played, she mentioned in Discord that you played pickleball for the first time yesterday and loved it. So Zelda, if you have any pickleball questions, make sure to ask. It's so fun. My wife Kelly has played probably like 15 times total now. But when she's not busy, she will play anytime. And we have fun groups of people we play with, and you just go out, exercise, it's social. She completely loves it. Well, if Zelda just played for the first time, there won't be a rating yet. Okay, next game. I'm playing white, but we're going to do something different here. My opponent's name was Grant, and he completely demolished me. This is one of the cleanest conversions I've ever seen, and I was on the losing end of it. So what we're going to do this game is we're going to play from Grant's point of view, and we're going to take down Matt Jensen in the smoothest way possible. Okay, so I played c4, just trying something different. Knight f6, d4. And what we're going to notice this game is our opponent, white, Matt Jensen, he never gets comfortable in this opening. So it's sort of like a Catalan or Bogo Indian, but we secure the c pawn with the knight on d2 pinned. So these types of positions can be tricky for white if you don't win that pawn back on c4 eventually. Bishop g2, a3 is a bit more accurate, but a3 played now, bishop e7, b3, c3, knight to b1, b4. So according to Stockfish, this is a 0.2 for white. So we don't have an advantage yet as black. But in the game, when I was playing the white pieces, I was very uncomfortable here. I don't love that this knight on b1 is being controlled by pawns. This is not a typical Catalan position for me. So here I played queen to d3. This is a mistake. The best move is actually knight to e5, trying to open up the bishop along the diagonal and play for the attack. I played queen to d3, and now black has an advantage. It's about half a pawn. Bishop a6, that's annoying. Poking at my queen. Queen c2. Bishop to b7 now. Pinning the knight, getting on the long diagonal. A takes b, bishop takes b4. Knight takes c3. So I get the pawn back as white. But now bishop to e4. And notice how black is just playing very actively, creating threats. Like there's already this pin, there's this pin, the queen's attacked, This pawn's potentially loose in some lines. I'm playing defense as the white pieces, and we're only 13 moves in. So the eval is close to equal. Well, this is easier to play for black, in my opinion. Queen d2, knight d5, being annoying. Bishop b2, knight c6, develop. Rook c1. And that's a mistake, but it's a tough position to play. I'm trying to free these pieces a little bit as white. The best move was rook to a4. It's the only move that keeps the position equal. So this is another great example of give your opponent tough questions and they will make mistakes. White's in a very difficult position here. So even though the engine's saying 0, 0, 0 after rook a4 is not an easy move to find. Right? Castling here makes a lot of sense. Rook c1 makes a lot of sense. Those are the second and third best moves, but they give a 0.7 advantage for black already. Okay, so I played rook c1. Zelda, correct. Knight to a5. That's the correct move. It wasn't even a guess the move position, but you're right, Zelda. Knight takes b3 with a massive fork threatened. I play queen d1, trying to defend. Rook to b8, developing another piece, adding an additional attacker here. The advantage is -1 right now. And here the best move is to castle, allowing a pawn to drop. But I played knight to h4. Massive, massive blunder. This is a -3.5 now. Find the best move for black. Question for the chat. How do we convert this? And the interesting thing here is I really like positions where I can sacrifice a queen. I find those very interesting when there's like a rook and a bishop and a pawn against a queen, or maybe you have the opponent's position in such bad shape that you can sacrifice your queen for something else with a pass pawn. I calculated in this line, because I had been feeling uncomfortable the whole game, that I wanted to make it a more unbalanced position. I calculated this line as a queen sack. And my eval at the end of the line was bad. What I should have done is just gave up a pawn and tried to fight back from there. But instead, I went for this crazy line where I sacked the queen. So what does black play here? Yeah, Zelda, that's correct. Seems like one of those positions where it's easy for an engine to play, but as a human, you have to play perfectly or else you get crushed. That's right. Okay, Zelda's saying g5. There's a couple bishop moves here that are both over that -2 threshold. The second best move is to play bishop takes c3 check. Then on the next move, take g2. But the best move is to take g2, which my opponent found. Yep, Dennis, that's correct. I took back, knight takes g2. And now, knight takes b3, attacking the rook. And there's no queen takes b3 because bishop takes c3 check wins the queen. But I had calculated this line. So now I'm kind of all in. I really can't ignore what's going on here. The knight's about to take my rook on c1. I can't move the rook because the knight on c3 dies. At this point, I'm all in. I knew this was going to be a queen sack line. I saw this idea and I went for it. But what I didn't realize is just how bad it is in the end. So bishop takes c3 check. Rook takes c3. Rook takes my queen. Rook takes back. Castle. So now we're going to see Grant play perfect conversion here. Okay, this is a +2 on material for black. It's a queen and a pawn for a rook and a bishop, so 10 points versus 8. And it's a -3.5 according to the computer. So it's a completely winning position. So he gets his king to safety. Plays e5. So what he's doing here is he sees my king in the center and he's trying to open up the middle. And he's okay with giving a pawn back. I take, rook takes. Now here I should have played bishop takes a7. It's the best move. It's still -3. What I didn't like about it is knight to b6 traps my bishop. And that's just one less piece I have to fight back. I felt the bishop was important to try to play for a sort of dynamic complications. So instead, I castled. And this turns out to be an annoying mistake because this passed A pawn is going to make a huge difference down the line. Knight B6, defending the pawn. Bishop E3, A5. And notice how Grant doesn't rush this position. What he did was he made everything solid. He put his king here, he used the knight to make sure that pawn was safe. This knight's defended by pawn and queen. His rook is just fine here. And now he starts pushing the A pawn. Every chance that he gets where he senses I don't have counterplay, he just simply moves that pawn one square up the board. And just keeps pushing the pawn. Knight F4, A4. So he checks for threats, doesn't see anything, pushes the pawn. Now, Spider, you are correct. No luff makes you nervous. Black does need to watch for the back rank mate. And I sense this, so I play rook d3. Queen moves to a8 behind the pawn, and then I play rook d1. So I'm trying to take advantage of that. So he's not going to push his a pawn here. But look what he does. Rook to e8. Simple chess. All of his pieces are fine right now. And he's got this pawn that's slowly marching up the board. He's trying to tie me down, make me play passive, just like we've seen in all the other examples. He knows what to do. And in my mind, I don't want to be that player that slowly gets crushed. I want to fight back dynamically. I want to make some chances to get back into this game more quickly. So now I play knight to d5. This is a mistake. I'm threatening to win this pawn. I think my idea was I was okay with the knight trade because I felt the bishop and rook was my way to get counterplay, and that my bishop could kind of control his queenside pawns at the same time. So I didn't care as much about the knights. But really, this is just losing another piece. Every trade makes it harder for me to fight back. So he simplifies. Rook takes. Now a3. Okay, so here I realize I can't fight back. I got to go stop this pawn. It's getting way too dangerous. And he doesn't go a2 here because I could play rook a1 and double attack it. He plays rook to b8. Rook a1. Now here, I'm close to winning this pawn back. Rook a2, bishop c5. I have 3 pieces that can attack the pawn. He only has 2 to defend it. So what does he do? Queen a5. He starts shifting gears a little bit. Now in this position, I don't know why I didn't play rook d to a2. I think I wanted to keep one rook more active. Keep this rook maybe watching the back rank, look for counterplay. Rook d to a2 is the strongest move, but instead I put this rook here. And now look what he does. h5. This is exactly like we've talked about. He's controlling me on the queen side. So now he pushes the pawn over on the king side to create new issues. My king square to get off the back rank is g2. That's not possible if his pawn goes up to h3. He's just being annoying and doing a good job converting this position. King g2, rook b3, defending the pawn. Rook d to c2, and my idea here is bishop to c5. Trying to just put long-term pressure on this pawn, maybe win it back eventually. Maybe I can push the e pawn, get some counterplay that way. I'm trying to do the same thing to black that he's trying to do to me. I'm trying to just tie down his pieces to play passive here, and then look for other ways that I can attack. Rook c3 beautifully shuts down my idea. He sees that I want to use the c5 square, doesn't give it to me. So I move the rook, and now look what he does. c5. Spider's saying playing on multiple sides of the board is a concept I always forget in game. Yes, it's something you want to remember. When you control the position, you have more space, you have the initiative, your opponent's just stuck playing defense. Always look to play on multiple flanks if you can. So here's c5. Ignore that little symbol. I don't think c5 is a bad move at all. But the idea is there's an additional passed pawn here that I have to think about. Right? So he's using multiple pawns to create threats while I'm stuck playing defense. King h3, c4. rook d4, and now look at this move. Actually, I'll have you guys find it. What move did Grant play in the game? This is a nice little tactic. He's trying to create problems for me. What move did Grant play in the game? And this is about a -6 position in terms of eval. There's multiple winning moves for black, so there's no wrong answer here. But I just thought the move he played was really nice. And it took me by surprise during the game. What do you guys think? Zelda's saying queen to b4 or queen to f5. Queen to f5 is the strongest move. That's what Stuart says too. It's a really natural looking move too, because from f5, checks the king and the queen can go down to b1 hitting the rook. That's going to cause some problems. Okay, the move he played in the game was rook to c2. That's a cool move. Now I can play rook to a1, but that just feels painful. Rook to a1, the c pawn pushes, the a pawn pushes again. It's all going down. So instead, I took queen f5 check with a fork. And now I kind of got what I wanted with the rook and bishop, but I knew that at this point the position was just dead lost. So now I'm thinking, can I somehow make a fortress? Can I use the rook and bishop to just hold those two passed pawns on the queen side? I knew it'd be a rough time to even attempt to make this happen, though. So I did rook d2, queen e4 check, king h3, c3, rook d1, a2. I resigned. Okay, so what are the takeaways from this game? When your opponent gives you a material advantage, so black was up +2 here on material, the conversion just becomes about risk management. So first you secure your position, right? He had his king safe, he had all the pieces safe, he had those pawns safe. He made sure that he never would lose a pawn as he pushed him up the queen side. And then once your position is secure, calmly and methodically push your advantage to the finish line. So you want to give your opponent 0 chances to come back. If you look at the chart from this game, it's as smooth as possible. It just increase until the win. I had 0 chances to fight back. And that's something where I felt that, you know, a lot of times if I'm playing a game and I'm in a worse position, I can at least make it messy. Like even if the engine doesn't quite say I did anything, this game I didn't even do anything. So not only did the engine say there was no chance, I didn't even feel like I made the position messy. Every threat was just immediately shut down, either before I went for it or right as it was threatened, it was shut down. So this was like a perfect conversion by my opponent. Really impressive play. Okay, one last game. This is a fun one. It's a Caro-Kann. It's an endgame. And what I like about this one is my opponent was a young player. His name was Ashwin, and he wanted the draw. So a lot of times young players will play very quickly, which he did in the game. And sometimes if they have a lower rating than you by a couple hundred points, they will just look to play for a draw. So he was about 200 points lower than me. He's in around 2000. I think he was 2010, somewhere around there. And I was about 2210. He wants the draw. He's got the white pieces. And we're going to get a Caro-Kann. And he goes for the exchange variation. And we reach this position. Now, in the notes, in the PGN text, I put this position probably has an eval of 0.000000 if you showed all those extra decimal places. Like you really can't get a more equal looking position than this, unless maybe it's like a French exchange instead of a Caro-Kann exchange. But I had the goal in this tournament, play more endgames and push for wins in the endgame. So that's what we're going to see here. And after this game, by the way, we're going to do one more giveaway. So make sure you stay tuned. One more course giveaway. So how do we push this for a win? He plays queen e2, trade bishops. Those bishops get traded. And now my first thought is, let's go for the minority attack. So my opponent has 4 pawns over here on the queen side. I have the 1D pawn and then A and B. This is a Carlsbad pawn structure. And one of the themes here is you can try to push on the queen side and undermine the white pawn structure. So that's my goal with A6. I want B5, B4, try to create problems. So this is how I'm going to try to play for the win. I'm going to try to make weaknesses in my opponent's camp and then use those weaknesses to press my advantage. Knight E3, knight takes, F takes, pawn to F5. Now this move is going to look really strange. Yeah, Caro is one of the best openings. I love the Caro. This move looks strange. Why am I creating a backward pawn on E6 unnecessarily? The reason I'm playing this move is just like we've talked about, I'm trying to control all my opponent's play. The eval here is 0.00. I don't have the advantage yet, but I sense that my opponent is not playing for the win. I sense that he's going to slip into just a passive position, happy to trade everything off, shake hands, agree to a draw. So what I'm doing with F5, and it's not a bad move, it just looks strange, I'm controlling his E4 pawn break. My plan is to play B5, which is going to control his C pawn break. So what I'm hoping happens, both sides get castled. He has no pawn breaks. Meanwhile, I have this queenside plan. Give your opponent no good plans while you have a plan. That's the goal here. Another very long-term thing I was thinking is as we approach the endgame, like let's say the queens come off the board, this is a V-shaped pawn structure. One thing you can do with the V-shape is you can play on both flanks, like we've talked about. So the pawn chains go both directions off of E6. That means it's a little bit easier to push the kingside pawns here. Now we don't have a C pawn, but with the pawn shaped like that, you're kind of looking at pushing on both flanks. And the downside is you have the weak pawn on E6. Well, E6 can't easily be attacked, but I have the advantage of being able to push on both flanks. So we're talking about all this stuff in a 0.00 position, but that just means don't always trust the engine. Look for what are your practical chances in a human against human game. Humans make mistakes. All right, so we're going to try to make life difficult for white. Castle, castle, rook d1, knight a5. Here comes the plan. I'm going to put the knight here. I'm going to push b5, minority attack. Now, at this point, we actually start to see an advantage creeping into the position according to Stockfish. So I'm going to keep you guys updated on that. The 0.0 is now a minus 0.2. The best move for white is pawn to b3, not allowing my knight to go to c4. But the problem with pawn to b3 is it weakens c3. So my opponent did not want to weaken the pawn. He wants to sit back and play for the draw. So he simply goes knight to e5, thinking, hey, I'll block this knight to c4 idea. So Mackenzie's saying, what would you have played if white had gone b3 instead? I think at b3, I would have played b5 and then tried to focus on maybe putting the rooks on the c file, try to line up with that pawn. But b3 was the way to go. So I would do something like rook c8, rook c7, other rook to c8, and maybe at some point push b4. But the nice thing for white is if he defends the c pawn, if I play b4, he could probably play c4 in some cases and be prepared to fight against the minority attack that way. But knight e5 doesn't give him that same idea of meeting b5, b4 with pawn to c4. Okay, so first I play rook c8. Now the best move again is b3, but he plays queen e2. So that minus 0.2 is now minus 0.3. And Spider's saying, what do we think of that outpost? This, in theory, looks like a beautiful outpost for the knight. And it is a good square. But the problem is he's not playing b3 to slow down my queenside pawns. And this c pawn now is undefended if this pawn moves. So queen e2, it's leaving that c3 pawn undefended, meaning the b pawn can't push for white. Okay, so minus 0.3. Knight c4, huge threat of trading the knights off. After it takes back, it wins the pawn. White pretty much needs to take. You could go knight f3, but that looks a little bit strange. You could go knight to d3, but I feel like both of those moves are allowing the black knight to be really annoying. So he takes. Now I have one less attacker, but rook takes c4. And here I have in the notes, mission accomplished. I have this plan that I'm playing for, b5, b4, minority attack. White, in my opinion, has no counterplay here. I completely control the c4 break. I completely control the e4 break. What is white going to go for here? This plan is so simple. b5, a5, b4. It's low risk. This is what I would call a two-result position. I should never lose this game. Either the opponent holds a draw or I'm able to push for the win. So queen f3 played. And Ashwin wants to play queen f4. He wants to go for the queen trade. b5, queen f4. Now at this point, I don't have anything better to do besides trade queens. His queen is starting to get active. I do have to be careful. In some lines, he might move his king and play g4. Like say I put my queen back on a passive square. Queen takes f8 could be a mate threat if this pawn moves. So I decided to trade queens. And I felt like I still have enough long-term pressure to play for this win. Now, with the queens off the board, this is where the kingside pawn play might come into the... what am I trying to say here? This is where the kingside pawn play might become a factor. Because with the queens off the board, I can put the king on f7, try to tie his rooks down over on the queen side, and then look to play on the king side. And get a position where white's playing defense, I'm playing offense. Can I move back and forth between the two flanks? Create problems on both sides. So that's the benefit of having the queens off the board. The downside of this position is that backward pawn is now on a half-open file, but my king can help defend it. So he puts one rook on it, I put the king to defend. If he puts two rooks on it, I use a king and a rook. So that means I still have the other rook free. So I'm okay with that pawn being backward, but this pawn being backward means I need to create issues somewhere else for white. That pawn is permanently stuck. Okay, rook c8, rook f2, king f7, defending this, maybe g5 later, king f1, a5, rook e2. So we had that minus 0.4. Now the advantage is minus 1. Okay, Mackenzie is saying in the chat, should white be looking at g4 to fight for something, or is it better to fight? Or is it better to hang on and try to hold the draw? Great question. I think at this point, white shouldn't try to fight with g4 because it's going to create an additional weakness. I think what white needs to do, and there are ways to do it here, look at what my threats are and be ready for your counterattack. So I think he was trying to just neutralize in terms of trading, but sometimes you have to neutralize in terms of setting up a different type of imbalance. So here, the key move is actually rook c2. He played rook to e2. This looks really strange. So this is one where you have to be thinking creatively and thinking, what is the opponent going to do? And how can I counter it? And sometimes you have to look for other ways to counter if nothing's looking good. After pawn to b4, he can play king to e2. Use the king. The king is a really powerful piece in the endgame. Now if b takes c3, he can actually push past. And this is the drawing plan for white. This king is going to walk up to d3, guarding this pawn and attacking the c pawn. And all of a sudden, there's not a great way for me to push this position. So let's say rook b4, king d3, pawn a4. Rook takes c3 is pretty simple. That minority attack is gone. This e-pawn is never going to matter. My rooks aren't posing any problems for white. And white has an extra queenside pawn. So the best move here is rook c to b8. The position is dead equal. Black's really not pressing for an advantage at all, in my opinion. So had white done rook to c2, b4 is actually a mistake. I need to look for other plans here to push. It's a minus 0.5 still, but rook c2 is a brilliant move in terms of stopping the main plan from black. So I think the question was on g4. I wouldn't play g4 because I think it makes weaknesses, but look for that kind of creative ways to counter your opponent's threats. So rook e2 played -1. b4. C takes b4 is the best move that was played in the game. But let's just look at this one more time. Why is it different here and not the other position? B takes c, b3, rook b4, king e2, a4, and now king d3. It's a little bit too slow here. White wasted a move, right? This rook moved twice. And after a takes b3, black is completely winning. Right? So in the other position, it was white to move here. Now it's black to move here. That makes all the difference. So that drawing idea doesn't work anymore with a takes b3. Okay, so he took c takes b, a takes b, and the idea here is I might play rook a8, pressure on the a file. I'm trying to use the one pawn to hold 2, and then I'm going to use this pawn to hopefully tie down the white rook. And I'll look to infiltrate as well. Maybe rook c2, maybe rook c1. The best move here is rook e to d2, which is tough to play. It's very passive. Instead, pawn to b3 is played. But the problem with this is now the a pawn's stuck. Rook c3, rook d to d2. White starts making some inaccuracies, but it's a tough position to play. King f2 was better, just preparing the king in the middle. h6, here comes the kingside plan. g3. And Ninad is saying, can white not go h3, g4 here? You could, but the problem is when your rooks are tied down playing passively, you don't want to open up the position too much because then my rooks can shift over to the king side and use the open files. So white actually wants to kind of just sit back and not trade any kingside pawns. If white could lock up the kingside pawns, like let's say this pawn went here, this pawn here, and this pawn here, and we had this formation, white might be able to hold that draw. But the problem is I don't have to lock it up as black. I can look to open up those files, use those files to create problems. Rook f2 played, king g6, king g2. Now here I want you guys to find the best move for black. So we know we have the advantage. Put your answers in the chat. We know we have the advantage. How do we convert this? The move I played was okay, but it's not great. I missed a chance here to push this advantage before my opponent could stop the idea. There's a really nice idea here. So in terms of eval, it's a minus 3.2 if you find this top move. Otherwise, you're in the maybe 2.5 point range. So put your answers in the chat. What's the best move here? We want to go for material. There's a hint. We want to take this positional advantage, convert it now to a material advantage. So what's the best move? This one's kind of deep. It's definitely not an obvious choice. And sometimes when you're in these controlling positions, you have to sort of let the control slip a little bit in some ways to get something else. You have to give a little to get something better. Like one of the things we're controlling right now is the C file. We're not allowing white to play rook c2 and fight for counterplay. We might have to give that up. There's a hint. We're going to have to allow white to jump on the C file. Okay, Zelda's saying rook e3 and then rook c to c3. Mackenzie's saying rook c1 or maybe rook e3. Rook e3 is correct. Nice job, guys. So rook e3. And the idea is this rook can come here, and we're going to win this pawn eventually. I'm trying to think, like, so white played rook c2 in the game. Like, rook c2 is the natural move. I guess that's what I thought he would play in the game. I'll show you this line, but then we'll try to figure out what to do if white doesn't play rook c2. Okay, so if rook c2, take, rook d3, and this pawn simply drops. We'll get something like this. -4.5. Black is completely winning. But then I also wanted to see what happens if white doesn't play rook c2. But the problem is, how do you even find a good move for white to show? Like if h3, rook c to c3, like Zelda said, and now the g pawn drops. Let's say king g1. Oops, rook c to c3. King g2. Rook c to d3. If white keeps waiting, this pawn drops. And if white tries to defend it, you go back for this pawn. So no matter what, white's dropping a pawn here. And there's a lot of lines to calculate. This PGN will be in the course, art of conversion course. But the whole idea is you want rook e3, rook c to d3, and one of these pawns is going to drop. White can't defend them, but you're giving up that c file. Okay, so I played king f6 in the game. The problem with this is rook to f3 brings that eval back to about a -2. So I got a little bit too lackadaisical here. I'm just sitting and kind of waiting and slowly building pressure, but this was a missed chance. Like I needed to have my radar ready, saying, okay, where are the tactics? Where are the tactics? Boom, rook e3, I can convert this. Because had I seen that my opponent could go rook f3 here and shut down that rook e3 plan, I might never get that plan back, right? I might never get that chance to cash in the same way. And it makes the game a lot more difficult. But fortunately, he played king to f1. Now I played rook e3, found the idea. King g2, rook c to c3, rook d1, g takes, g takes. So this creates another isolated pawn. Notice how both white rooks are tied down here. And then, do you guys want to guess the move played in the game? So there's multiple winning moves, but guess what I played as black? I think it's the most annoying move for white to face. Find an annoying move for black. And then after this, we're doing a course giveaway after this game. Rook c to d3 looks good. Yeah, I'm seeing 3 stockfish lines. They all have the same eval. One of them is rook c to d3. It's a good move. Try to find what's a good slow move that's just really annoying for white. It's kind of similar to how Miles converted in the other game we looked at. Stuart says h5. That's the move. In the game, I played h5. Dennis, Ninad all saying h5. So the idea is this h pawn doesn't want to move. And this pawn is going to march up to h3 and just be super annoying for the white king. Zelda and Spider both h5, yeah. So rook c to d3, completely winning. Nothing wrong with this move at all. If this rook comes over, there's actually a really cool tactic here. Rook e2 check. Takes, and this pawn dies. But I like this h5 move because I was in the spirit of playing slow still. You know, I did miss that opportunity to get rook e3 on the first try when I played king f6. But I'm in the slow play mode still, and I'm kind of enjoying watching my opponent squirm a little bit, I think, too. It's over the board, and you just see him uncomfortable every single move. So the plan is h4, h3. My opponent plays rook f to d2. I play h4. And the takeaways here are Despite that small mistake moving the king, the overall plan was correct. So I used the king first, got the king to f6, and then started pushing the kingside pawns while the opponent's pieces were tied down. And it was the positional pressure that ultimately secured the win. I'll just show you guys what happened for the end of the game. He goes king g1, rook f3, hitting this pawn. Rook f2. Rook comes back. He goes back, takes, and then I used this idea, attack the one pawn and go back like we looked at earlier. And here, white resigned. Now in the game, I thought he resigned a little bit quickly, but it was the last round of the day. So sometimes you just want to go get dinner, go back to the hotel for the night. I get it. It's a -5.5 eval. It's completely winning for black. But I did feel like he should make me show the endgame technique. But once this pawn drops with these pawns locked up, essentially I'll have 2 pass pawns in the middle once I start pushing. So that was the game. Yeah, Spider's saying simple chess. Love it. So now we're going to do, that was the last game we're reviewing. We're going to do Q&A first, and then we're going to give away a course. So overall questions from today. Put your questions in the chat. Any questions on converting? Any game-specific questions that you have lingering? Is converting something that you guys look at in your own takeaways? Is it something that you need help with? Or do you feel that you're a strong converter already? Because what I'm hoping is after this class or after watching the Art of Conversion course, all of these thoughts should just be running through your mind while you're playing your games. And then hopefully you think like, oh, I can do this thing that I learned in the course, right? I can tie down my opponent's pieces. I can create this long-term thread. I can shift which side of the board I'm attacking on. You'll start to just think these things during the game. And then when you review your own games, you'll also start to notice these same things as well. Okay, Mackenzie's saying, do you think there is any difference between conversion and advantage capitalization? Not that I can think of off the top of my head. I think of them as kind of the same. Like one phrase that I've used before is realizing the advantage. And that's not just like appreciating that you have the advantage, but it's how do you make that advantage into a win? But I feel like conversion is converting that advantage to a win. Advantage capitalization is taking the advantage, pushing it to the win. There might be small differences, but I think it's the same idea. It's you have the advantage. How do you make it into a win? So even though we've talked about like how we created the advantage, big focus is like, hey, I'm a 1 point eval favorite here, 0.7 favorite. How do I make a win out of that? Spider is saying, what tips do you have for being overzealous and going for the kill too quickly when having an advantage? It's practice. I think kind of having that like boa constrictor mindset where you just want to tie down the opponent. It's one of my favorite styles of chess that I've just developed over time. It's fun going for like the tactical knockouts, but I think it's even more rewarding to have a long strategic positional battle where you have full control most of the game and you're trying to keep that full control while they're trying to fight back. It's one of the cleanest ways to win because you can just take small advantages and really reduce the risk of losing those games. So I think it just takes practice, Spider. Just think about these techniques. It's like the game where I was impatient. Always keep an eye on, do I go quick or do I move slow, and be okay with both options. You don't have to just get stuck in the mindset of, hey, this is a quick win game or a slow grind game. Look for both. Figure out which is best. Zelda says, when do you know to move wing pawns? Those moves are always the hardest for me to find, even at 1300. Great question, Zelda. If you have a space advantage on one flank of the board, you should always be thinking about, can I move a wing pawn there? And this is something that Alpha Zero really made popular. When Alpha Zero first came out and it beat Stockfish in some beautiful games, one thing that people noticed is that Alpha Zero liked to push the rook pawns, and in weird positions where it didn't even make sense. But the nice thing with pushing a rook pawn is usually Pushing the rook pawn doesn't create a large weakness. Now, we did see in that one game when my opponent had doubled f pawns, he pushed his h pawn and that just got captured. So that was bad. But in general, if you are pushing a rook pawn, it doesn't create a huge weakness, but it can weaken the opponent's structure as it goes up the board. Now, you don't want to push the rook pawn when it's going to get captured, so usually you have to be the side that already has some sort of space advantage on that flank. And then also when it gets closer to an endgame, so like as soon as the queens come off the board, and if your king is safe, those are situations where I look to push pawns. Now, can I use the pawns to create problems? And I think you're on the right track, Zelda, because at 1300, if you're below 1300, a lot of times we're teaching students, use your pieces, put your pieces on good squares, create threats, look for tactics. But around that 1300 point, you'll start to find more and more games go into these positional struggles. So that's when the pawn play becomes more important. And Stockfish now is super good at knowing when to push the pawns. So just keep reviewing games, look when Stockfish says to push the pawns, and try to figure out why it's good. Which opening, in your view, Caro-Kann or French as black? I love the Caro-Kann. I mean, the Caro-Kann I've played on and off my whole career. It's the most popular ChessGoals opening. We have a Caro-Kann opening course, tactics course, and middle games course on our website. So I would vote Caro-Kann, but we do have a French defense course that's really good as well. I just like the Caro-Kann better because the French allows for the French exchange, which I'm not a huge fan of, whereas the Caro exchange, we just saw a good example in this game. I feel like it gives you enough imbalances to play for the win. Okay. Get ready for the answers in the chat. We're doing a next giveaway. Zelda, you're eligible to. You can win 2 courses. This is going to be get closest to the number again to win. ChessGoals a couple years ago switched to the Thinkific platform. So that's where all of our courses are hosted. Okay, Zelda, you still guess then, but we'll make you ineligible. You can still guess. See if you get closest. But we'll give it to someone else if you do win. So we're on the Thinkific platform now. How many students does ChessGoals have on their Thinkific platform? Put your answers in the chat. Whoever's the closest will win. How many students are in the Thinkific platform for ChessGoals? This can be free courses or paid courses. ChessGoals Blueprint, a lot of people just have the blueprint. Okay, Dennis says 1,200. Semicolon says 1,000. And while you're putting in your guesses, just a reminder, the Art of Conversion course on our website is $14 through the end of tomorrow, through the end of Sunday. I just dropped a link in the chat. That's our founder's price. It's like the early price. That price will go up to $29 starting on Monday. So go check it out if you haven't yet. Go check it out right after this class. Everything we talked about today is going to be added to the class. So there's already, I believe, 9 games in there. There's going to be an additional 5 games added. Full PGN with some additional commentary in the PGN notes. Quizzes for every game. Key takeaways for every game. And I think this is something where you guys go through all of these games, maybe every so often review some of them. It's going to make your conversions that much cleaner. So $14 through the end of Sunday. Courses.chessgoals.com. Link in the chat. It's our Art of Conversion course. Okay, Mackenzie's. Okay, Semicolon, you're changing to 1,500. Yep, that's fine. Mackenzie, 7,000. Spider, 2,300. Rizka, absolutely no idea, but let's say 4,444. Stuart, 1,750. Zelda, my guess is 350. think based on the Discord server with how many have student or lifetime access and multiplying that by how many don't end up on Discord. Well, Zelda, I think you'll want to go higher then. There's a lot more students on Thinkific than in Discord, because only a percentage of people go to Discord. Okay, so one person got really pretty close, and no one else was even in the ballpark. So the winner is Mackenzie. So Mackenzie, let me know, how can I contact you? If you have Discord, put your Discord username. If you are in the Thinkific platform already, maybe tell me like the first 3 letters of your email address, or maybe I can just find you searching Mackenzie, but I'll need to contact you somehow. So the number is 7,837. 7837. Okay, I'm going to just see if I can find Mackenzie in here without hopefully doxing anybody. We have a running joke that whenever Jesse and I would do podcasts, he would always dox them, like give out information to find them. DC, hope is the carrot. Okay, so you're already in Discord. Is that correct, Mackenzie? Are you in our Discord server? If not, there's the link for Discord. Okay, perfect. Hope is the carrot. All right. Okay, so which course do you want, Mackenzie? Do you know yet? Have you looked? Yeah, thanks, Zelda. It's honestly amazing, like thinking back to when Jesse and I first started ChessGoals to where it's grown to, and it's still a very small company in the bigger scope of the chess world, but it's really cool to kind of think back on the history and just like being able to help a wide audience. You know, I like teaching students one-on-one, but I don't do any one-on-one teaching anymore because I want to spend every free hour that I have for chess instruction on doing something to help more people at the same time. So lately you've probably noticed, like gung-ho on ChessGoals. Conversion course, endgame course, a bunch of improvement courses. We got the habit course. We have the study with limited time course. I'm probably forgetting a couple. We have the blunder course that Azel did. So we have all these improvement courses coming out now. And then I'm trying to increase activity in the Discord server. So it used to be you had to purchase a course to join Discord. Now anyone can join Discord. And if you've purchased a course, then we have additional channels that you can unlock. So anyone now, if you're watching this, come join our Discord server. We have a lot of public channels available, and it's a really positive atmosphere. Okay, Mackenzie, fighting French. Awesome. All right, I'll get that noted here. And I'll add those as soon as we're done. Spider is saying, I'm getting the blunder course soon when I get paid, LOL. Awesome. Hazel will appreciate that too. Hazel's a great coach. Zelda says, so many new courses are coming out. I'm still working my way through the blunder course right now and need to finish the Caro-Kann course. Yep. The nice thing about a lot of the new courses is they are around an hour to an hour and a half of video content, plus some quizzes and takeaways. So really, you should be able to finish those courses in like hour and a half to 2 hours max. And they're nice bite-sized chunks. So usually they'll have 10 different videos or something built into that hour. So you can just do 5 or 10 minutes at a time and work your way through it. That actually brings up one question that I want to ask you guys. This is something that I've been toying around with in my head. For the opening courses, what do you guys think, instead of having one video per chapter? So let's take Caro-Kann, for example. Caro-Kann Exchange has one chapter in the Caro course. And it has a video that's about 45 minutes long. and there's 10 chapters, and each of those chapters has a 45-minute video. Now, I know everyone's busy, and it's nice to complete something versus leave it unfinished. And 45 minutes seems overwhelming sometimes, or a lot of the times. What do you guys think about me taking a 45-minute video that covers 10 lines and instead having like 10 4 or 5-minute videos per chapter, where it's line number 1 of the exchange, line number 2, 3, 4, 5, separating them all out? What do you guys think of that concept for an opening course? Maybe put in the chat, do you prefer big or small videos? Because some people might say, oh, that's too much clicking next after each video. Like, just give me 45 minutes and let me watch the whole thing. But I could also see the other side where you think, oh, maybe I just want to spend 10 minutes and not pause the video halfway through. Even though it remembers where you're at, you don't get that satisfaction of completing something. I was also thinking maybe having both as options. But it'd be nice if everyone was kind of agreeing on one or the other. Oh, hey, Matt, welcome. Yeah, you can more easily find the lines. That's true. Because we could have like we could have some sort of guide. I was already working on an ECO table for the CarolCon course. It's in the course where you can kind of look through the lines and see where you're at. I could link in there how to get to the video on each line. Or just label the lines 1 through 10 and they match what's in the ECO table. You go to the ECO table, you see which line it is, go watch the video. That'd be pretty simple. Okay, I'm going to think about this. I have a lot of things on my to-do list for chess goals, but this is something that I want to try. And probably what I would do first is I would send an email to all the course owners and just say, hey, I have this idea. Now, maybe I could have a Google Drive link to go watch the full videos if you prefer that. But if most people vote on the bite-sized chunks, I kind of like this idea. It's something new, and I don't know of any other courses that are really like that. But so far, it seems like people kind of like the idea of the short videos. Okay, cool. Thanks for that feedback. All right, that's it for today. 1 hour, 45 minutes in. It was a good session. Art of Conversion course. It's on the website. $14 through the end of tomorrow. It's going to jump up to $29. Join the Discord if you're not in our Discord server. I'll paste that link one more time. Endgame course is out already if you guys want to check that out. There will be more announcements coming out this upcoming week, though, via email. All right, thanks everyone for watching. Have a good rest of your day.